Welcome to another episode of Washington in Focus. I'm your host, Tim Klauser, with the Center Square's Washington State Capitol correspondent, Carlene Johnson, here to talk about somewhat of an ideological war in today's climate, especially in more of the metropolitan cities like Seattle in this case, but housing first on a lot of people's mind, especially with President Donald Trump's recent executive order over homelessness back in July, vowing to sort of end the housing first model and lean more towards a treatment first approach. Carlene, you've engaged with both sides of this, both the person that helped create housing first and then a nonprofit in Seattle that does a lot of work to help clean up the city and address homelessness, but is very outspoken against the housing first model. Why don't you tell me a little bit about housing first and kind of where both sides divide on this?
Yeah. And it was, I got to give you some props, Tim, because it was your tip to reach out to this Dr. Sam Sambaras, who's basically considered the father of housing first. And it was, he had done a lot of work with homeless population. And he came up with an idea about 20 plus years ago. I think it's actually closer to 25 years ago now, that said the reason people are on the streets, there's varying reasons people are on the streets, right? It's addiction, it's mental illness. I lost my job. I got kicked out of my house, whatever it is. His idea was, let's get people inside. Let's get them a house, and then we can deal with whatever the other issues are that they're facing, their mental illness, their drug abuse, their alcoholism, their need some job retraining, whatever that is. Get them inside to save their life. And then we go from there. That was 20 plus years ago. And it's a model that King County and Seattle, and I know you know a heck of a lot about Spokane, covering that part of the state, Tim, that is a model that has been widely adopted certainly in more progressive parts of the country and communities that are more progressive. The problem at this point is that the housing first model, according to many critics, and I suppose you could honestly say, based on the evidence, it's not working. We have more people on our streets than ever. We have more drug addicted, mentally ill people on our streets than ever. And the ravage to communities is, undeniable. So that's where President Trump stepped in with his recent, executive order, basically saying we're going to dismantle housing first, and we're going to insist that, we clean up our streets. We get people. Yeah, sure. Let's get people inside, but there will be, in exchange for that, an expectation that you're going to get clean, you're going to get sober, you're going to get in job retraining, and it's not going to be an open-ended, we're just going to put a roof over your head and let you continue in your addiction cycle.
I know the godfather of housing first, he argues that, is effective in the sense that it's getting people off the street. But I think it's important, as your article did, to put this, look at this in a matter of when this idea was introduced, which was coming out of the crack epidemic. And as heroin was increasing in popularity, which, while a very lethal and highly addictive drug, I mean, it's nothing in comparison to fentanyl nowadays. And that's the kind of issue that I see a lot of times between both sides, is that, you have people that support housing first and they argue, look, it is working. And maybe you could argue, yeah, it is working in the sense that you're taking people off the streets, but it's not addressing addiction. And overall, homelessness is still rising across the country. And he kind of begged the question in that clip that you included in your article, and is that, is it better to see people die on the street, or is it better to see people die in shelters? And that's something that I've heard in Spokane, is that, my coverage myself, last year, Spokane had more overdose deaths than it's ever had. And a lot of that was attributed to fentanyl, but the majority of those overdoses were within residences. And that's not because it was, say, a grandma or grandpa overdosing on pain pills or something in their living room. A lot of those were happening in shelters. So it's not to say that housing first is, making things better. It's just taking the death from on street to off the street. It doesn't seem like.
Is that compassion, right? Are we to say, I mean, and you're right. He told me in my interview with that doctor, the father of Housing First, he said, yeah, I mean, it's basically, wouldn't we rather they be sheltered when they die? Well, how about in exchange for that shelter, there is an expectation and a belief that these people can get clean and sober, because the other side of this are the folks with We Heart Seattle and some other nonprofits not funded by the city. These are not NGOs that are getting government funding, grant funding of any sort. This is We Heart Seattle, the people that are on the street trying to get people into shelter with an expectation of recovery as well. I spent 4 hours on the street a couple of weeks ago with Andrea Suarez, founder of We Heart Seattle, and a couple of her, I think she only has the 2 full-time staff members. Others are volunteers. They're 5 years old now. They are of the belief that these lives matter, and they're sick of walking over dead bodies on the streets or finding them inside these low barrier, no barrier housing units where people have, yes, been given a roof over their heads, but are still in the cycle of addiction. They're of the belief that, yeah, we can get people clean and we can change lives. And I am of the opinion, after working on this story for the last few weeks, Tim, that's the only way to go about this. And I know I'm injecting opinion in here as a reporter, but there's nothing compassionate about the model that Seattle and some of these other Housing First do no harm, no harm models are painting. I mean, I sat there in the office of We Heart Seattle, and and I painted a picture of this word picture in my article. The King County, Seattle Public King County Health hands out these kits. It's got foil, so you can cook your drugs on a clean piece of foil. It's got clean syringes, so you can inject and not, pass on anything harmful. It's got alcohol wipes so that you can cleanly wipe to find that vein on your arm. It's got all kinds of pamphlets that encourage users, don't use alone. So that you can have some, it's got Narcan, of course, the overdose reversal drug. It's got clean bands so that you can tie off, to get a clean vein. I mean, everything to, I suppose, if you're going to continue in the cycle of addiction and we don't believe you can ever stop, save yourself today so that you can use again tomorrow. Is that compassionate? No. And at what cost? We've lost 30,000 lives in the state of Washington to drug addiction in the last 20 years since we adopted Housing First as a model. The United States of America is losing more than 300 people every single day to this drug crisis, and at a massive cost to taxpayers, massive cost. So I know I just got a little bit on my soapbox there for a minute, but when you walk on the streets with these people that are trying to make a difference and you see what's happening to people, there's nothing compassionate about the course, and it needs a correction at this point, or we're just going to lose, 30,000 more people and at a faster pace than we have over the last 20 years, because fentanyl's killing, 3 or 4 people every single day in our state.
And those are needles that are ending back up on the streets too. They might be clean when you get them, but it's not uncommon to be walking around Seattle and to see several hypodermic needles stabbed into a tree or some sort of telephone or electricity pole, to see them covered around parks where children are supposed to be playing.
Seen them in
Andrea Suarez talked about that.
Yeah.
It's definitely an issue that needs to be addressed, but looking forward to this executive order and changes that might be ahead. I mean, it's really interesting to see where we'll go, because, the Housing First model, it was largely adopted by the Obama administration back in, I think, pre-2010 during his first term. And it has really just led the way since. And now with this transition, I know you hear the argument from that doctor and other people that support Housing First that, this follows the science. We need to follow the science. But it'll be interesting to see what happens as this new model moves in, and these new requirements that these nonprofits that take taxpayer funds, what accountability measures they'll be held to held to in terms of metrics and outcomes. But definitely something we'll continue to keep our eyes on, and we'll continue to watch your coverage as it comes out. For anyone hoping to read that, you can catch it at thecentersquare.com. But otherwise, thank you for joining us for another episode of Washington in Focus.